So how does profit maximization work under monopolistic competition? So as I've mentioned, in any market structure that you're dealing with, MC is equal to MR will always be the optimal choice under any of the market structures to determine the quantity to produce if we choose to produce. In this situation, in monopolistic competition, in the short run, the firm can make a profit or a loss. But if there's profits, there's going to be an attraction for other firms to come into the market. So what would this look like graphically? Well, it would look quite similar to what we had under a monopoly. So we would have this situation if I'm looking at a specific firm. They face a downward sloping demand curve. Why? Well, because they're differentiated enough that they're facing some form of market demand. Yes, it's linked to other products. They would have a downward sloping marginal revenue curve, should be twice as steep. And then typical, any of these firms have an upward sloping marginal cost curve. So here we would see that in monopolistic competition, this would be my quantity. I would choose this price here. And MC here is just for monopolistic competition here as well. This would be the price I would choose. And let's say the average total cost were somewhere over here. Well, I would see that my average cost per unit would be this amount for this quantity. Therefore, I'm making a certain profit per unit times the quantity. So all of this would be profit potentially. So what would happen over time as more companies enter? So a marginal competitive firm can make profit in the short run. What happens over time? Okay. Well, other firms will enter. So let's say you're Apple or someone else and you just released this iMac with a 5K resolution. And it's like the new thing to have such high resolution in your screen. People are attracted to it. You're making money. Or your new iPhone has this cool feature. People are attracted to it. They buy it. Well, how will other people react? Well, a lot of the competitors or new players will try to offer the same product you're offering at a lower cost or something else. So as other firms will enter, there is more options. We would say that there is more options. Okay. And if we think back to the demand curve in terms of price elasticity of demand, and we looked at availability of substitutes, what would happen if you introduce much more substitutes to a certain product? Does it make the demand curve flatter or steeper? If you think about it, it would actually make the demand curve flatter. Why flatter? Well, when a demand curve is flatter, or to make it relatively flat, a small change in price could change dramatically how people consume it, which would be the case if you have a lot of substitutes available and your price is too high. You're just gonna be wiped out. No one's gonna buy your product. Whereas if we had no substitutes, it would be close to vertical, because people wouldn't have a choice but to buy your product. There's no other options. So the demand curve would become flatter. So over time, what would happen is this demand curve here, this was my initial demand curve, would become flatter. And because I have less demand for my product, it could actually be more downward. So it could be actually down here because there's more competitors. So this would be my new demand curve, would be something like this. Associated to this new demand curve, I would have a new marginal revenue curve. Here, where MC is equal to MR, could be this quantity here. It doesn't have to be more or less. It all depends where MC crosses MR. I'll have this situation where I'm going to choose a certain price. The price won't be able to be as high as before because I have more competition. And in this situation here, I might have the situation where I have no profit, zero profit in the long run. So what would typically happen in this end scenario here is I would be at this point here. This would be my new price. Okay. Price prime or whatever. And at this situation here, this would be my average total cost. So I would notice that at this point here, I have zero profit in the long run. So that as more and more firms enter, similar to perfect competition, I would have zero profit in the long run. Once again, zero profit in the long run is not necessarily a terrible thing. It's a situation where I'm not making an excess amount of money. If I were to work for someone else or have my own business, I'm making roughly the same. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you think of firms in this situation, as more and more firms enter offering a similar product than you, they don't necessarily want to go to making zero profit. Apple does not want to go to a situation where it pays all its employees the right amount and it's not making any excess amount of money, or that they're not making crazy bonuses and stuff like that. They don't want to go to that situation. So what's the way to get away from this zero profit in the long run? Okay, how do we get away from this? Well, it's very important. You have to keep innovating. You have to innovate. Okay? If you keep innovating, well, you're always one step ahead of your competitor. If you're always one step ahead of your competitor, you're always offering a product that is seen as superior, doesn't have any close substitutes. So in that situation, you can be making economic profit year after year after year. So Apple is very good at this. It keeps on innovating, it keeps on creating new things that people enjoy, and it's becoming pretty much one of the largest corporations on earth, and it's making a lot of money because of that reason. So innovation is key in industries such as that. So you want to keep innovating to make sure that you avoid this zero profit in the long run. Sometimes you might want to use advertising, even though your product's not superior than others. If you can make people believe that it's superior than others, people will have an attraction towards it. So if you think about maybe energy drinks or something, some people could think that some of them are seen as roughly equivalent. But because Red Bull just does such a great job at organizing competitions and everything else, and just being present a lot and having a lot of good vibes around the product, a lot of people are tempted to go towards Red Bull. So it's another way to make sure that you always stay ahead of the curve. So this is what happens. So firms can make profits in the short run. Okay. So implications is the monopolistic firm in the long run will have zero profit like a perfectly competitive firm. The price will still be superior than the marginal cost of production, which is similar to a monopoly. And we're in this portion where the long run average total cost is decreasing, which means that we're not producing at our optimal level and we're losing some level of efficiency. But that's very similar to monopoly, and this point here is a little bit more technical. Okay. Last but not least, regarding monopolistic competition, is the concept of having extra products available. Is it beneficial or not? Does it offer more value to the consumer or not? Okay, so here we're not producing enough. There's too many companies and they offer different products. So here we have a situation that we're underproducing compared to the efficient level. But do we have enough companies available? So is product variety a good thing or a bad thing? So if you think about it, if there's just one product available and you go to the grocery store or to the home hardware store, sometimes you crave a second option. You're like, this is good, but in my instance here, I would choose something a little bit different. So in that situation, product variety, having a little bit more can be beneficial to certain customers. So variety is good for some reasons. So the consumer surplus increases as there's more product variety, whereas producer surplus falls when there's more product variety because they're splitting the market share. The question that we always have to wonder is, how much product variety do we really need? Like, how many times have you gone to the grocery store or somewhere else, gone to buy something, and there's just tons of options available, and you're going through them and you're thinking like, which of these do I really want? Like, which of these toilet papers is actually the best one possible? Which of these is the best deal? And when there's just too many options, you're wasting time searching to try to find which is the best option. So it leads to some level of inefficiency in terms of wasted time. So in terms of this industry, ideally from a societal perspective, you want to have some competition to drop the price and to make consumer surplus greater and to have more variety, but too much options is not necessarily good. So we've gone through the 4 market structures: perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. You should be able to think about any industry that's out there, any company that's out there, and think right away, this company is associated to this market structure. This product is associated to this market structure. This should be simple if you know your assumptions of all the market structures well. Once you've highlighted what this company, which market structure this company should be in, you should remember how to analyze what's going to happen to this industry in short run, long run, and so on and so forth. How are they going to choose their quantity, their optimal quantity to produce? So you really want to make sure that you see the clear distinction between all 4. This chapter had 2, but they're clearly very different.